It's over. At least that's what you told yourself, huh?
I sat in the dark.
What broke you, my man? What broke you? There comes a moment in a man's life when he quietly convinces himself it's over. Not because someone told him it was, but because life slowly whispered it until he finally believed it. Maybe he doesn't even like looking in the mirror anymore, because every time he does, his reflection tells a story. A story of regret, a story of shame, a story of promises broken, a story of opportunities missed, a story that keeps reminding him of the man he used to be and the man he never became. Maybe it was the day you lost your job, the day you emptied your desk for the last time and drove home wondering who you were without a check, who you were without money, who you were without a title. And maybe it was the day she walked away, the silence in the house becoming louder than any argument ever was. Maybe it was the addiction, the relapse, the promise you made to yourself. This time will be different, only to wake up carrying the same disappointment all over again. Maybe it was the bridges you burned, the people you hurt, the words you wish you could take back. Or maybe it wasn't one life-changing moment at all. Maybe it was hundreds of ordinary disappointments, hundreds of mornings where nothing seemed to change, hundreds of nights wondering why everyone seemed to be moving forward, while you stayed exactly where you were, until one day, without realizing it, you stopped believing in your future. The hardest part isn't the job you lost. It isn't the addiction. It isn't the rejection. It isn't even the years that feel wasted. The hardest part is the conversation that begins afterward. The quiet voice that says, maybe this is who I am now. Maybe I'll never change. Maybe this is all life has to offer me. Those words weigh more than unemployment, heavier than doubt, heavier than loneliness, heavier than defeat. Because once a man begins believing it's over, he slowly stops becoming the man he was meant to be. He stops applying. He stops trying. He stops dreaming, stops believing. Not because he lacks ability, but because hope quietly packed his bags and left. He no longer says, I made a mistake. He now says, I am the mistake. He no longer says, I lost my way. He now says, I am lost. He no longer says, I'm struggling. He now says, I am broken. Do you see what happened? The failure ended, but the story didn't. That relationship ended, but the story didn't. The addiction relapsed, but the story didn't. The job disappeared, but the story didn't. Only the chapter ended. Yet somehow, you begin living as though the entire book was finished. Maybe you spent years carrying shame nobody knows about, smiling in public while falling apart in private, laughing in conversations while silently wondering if you'll ever become the man you once dreamed of. And maybe you convince everyone around you that you're fine, while secretly asking yourself, is this okay? Did I miss my chance? Is it too late for someone like me? If you've ever asked those questions, this message is for you. Not because your life is gonna be easy, not because everything is about to magically change, but because the greatest lie you've ever believed isn't that you failed. It's that your failure was the ending And before you can rebuild your life, you must first discover what actually ended and what never did. Because despite everything you've been through, despite every mistake, every loss, every relapse, every reason you've given yourself to quit, it may feel like it's over, but I think that's a lie.
Too tired to hurt. Shame on my tongue, and a bottle by the bed. I was talking to the floor for the words I never said. Then the night went still like it heard me breathe.
The lie you started to believe.
I said if I fall, let me fall through.
The greatest damage failure ever does. It isn't what it takes from you. It isn't the money. It isn't the relationship. It isn't the years. It isn't even the reputation. The greatest damage failure ever does is what it convinces you to believe about yourself. A man loses his job, and at first he simply says, I lost my job. In fact, nothing more, but enough time passes and he never challenges the story playing in his mind. That sentence slowly changes. Nobody will ever hire me. Then I'm unemployable. Do you see what happened? Nothing changed except the meaning he attached to it. A man relapses. At first he says, I made another mistake. Another relapse comes, then another, until one day he stops saying I made a mistake and starts saying I'll never quit. And this is just who I am. A relationship ends, and at first he says she left me. But if that pain sits long enough, it becomes I'm not worthy of love. And one disappointment becomes a definition. One failure becomes an identity. One chapter becomes the entire story. This is where so many men quietly lose themselves, not because life defeated them, it's because they accepted defeat as their identity. Every painful experience eventually asks the same question. Who are you now? And if you're not careful, you'll answer with your worst day instead of your greatest potential. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called self-image. Your self-image is not who you truly are. It's who you come to believe you are. It is the picture you carry in your mind every single day. It is the story you keep telling yourself, the label you've accepted, the identity you've rehearsed so many times. It feels like the truth. And here's what makes it so dangerous. Your mind does not live according to your reality. It lives according to your identity. Whether that picture is accurate or completely false, your decisions begin to agree with it. A man who believes he is broken begins making broken decisions. A man who believes he'll never change stops looking for reasons to try. A man who believes he isn't worth saving stops saving himself. He stops applying. He stops learning. He stops showing up. Not because he can't, but because his self-image has already decided the outcome. That's why two men can experience the same exact tragedy and build completely different futures. One says, this happened to me. The other says, this is me. One says, I messed up. The other says, I am messed up. One believes he experienced failure. The other believes he became failure. That one small shift changes everything. Because the moment your pain becomes your identity, your future begins taking orders from your past without realizing it. You begin creating the same cycles, making the same decisions, expecting the same outcomes. Because every choice is trying to stay consistent with the man you've convinced yourself you are. And eventually, you don't just believe it's over, you begin living as though it is. But here's the truth that changes everything. If a lie can be learned, it can be unlearned. If an identity can be built, it can be rebuilt. And if you can rebuild the man, you can rebuild the life. That's where hope begins. And that's where everything starts to change.
But something in the dark started calling me too. I thought my life was over. I thought I was done. But I'm still here, baby. I found my lungs. Lift me up out of the grave I made.
Focus on yourself. If your self-image was built, one thought, one decision, one habit, one promise at a time, then it can be rebuilt the exact same way. Not overnight, not with one motivational speech, not by wishing your past away, not by pretending those painful years never happened, but by returning your attention to the one person you've been abandoning for far too long, yourself. Because somewhere along the way, you became an expert at replaying everything you lost. The opportunity, the relationship, the years, the money, the addiction, the relapse, the rejection, the mistakes, the guilt, the shame, the vision of yourself you wish you could go back and save. And while you've been staring at everything behind you, life has quietly kept moving forward. So let me ask you something. How do you rebuild tomorrow while living in yesterday? How do you become someone new while introducing yourself to yourself as the man you used to be? You don't. At some point, your attention has to change direction, because where your attention goes, your identity follows. If every day you focus on what you've lost, you'll continue becoming the man who believes he has nothing left. And every day you focus on your failures, your mind will continue searching for evidence that you're a failure. But if you begin focusing on what you can still build, something remarkable happens. Hope quietly returns, not because circumstances changed overnight, but because you did. Focus on your thoughts, because every thought is casting a vote for the man you're becoming. Focus on the words you speak to yourself, because eventually those words become your beliefs. Focus on your beliefs, because beliefs become decisions. Focus on your decisions, because decisions become habits. Focus on your habits, because habits later become character, and character becomes identity, and your identity becomes destiny. This isn't about being selfish. It's about finally becoming responsible for the one life you've been given, keeping the promises you make to yourself, getting out of bed when you don't feel like it, taking care of the body you've neglected, reading one more page, submitting one more application, making one more phone call, praying one more prayer, choosing sobriety one more day, choosing discipline one more hour, choosing hope one more time. The moments don't seem life-changing. In fact, most people overlook them completely. But your mind doesn't. Your self-image is watching. Every single decision, every promise you make, every temptation resisted, every difficult morning you refuse to surrender. Every action whispers something back to the man in the mirror. Maybe I'm stronger than I thought. Maybe I haven't missed my chance. Maybe it's not over. Maybe I can trust myself again. Maybe you see what's happening. Do you see what's happening? You're no longer arguing with your identity. You're replacing it, not with empty affirmations, not with false confidence, but with evidence, real evidence. Evidence that says, I'm still here. I'm still fighting. I'm still becoming. You don't rebuild your identity by having one more perfect day. You rebuild it by giving yourself thousands of teeny pieces of proof. Until one day you look in the mirror again. Instead of seeing the man your pain created, you begin recognizing the man your perseverance is creating. And that is the moment you realize maybe it was never over after all. Maybe this is where your new life begins.
I wore my mistakes
self-trust. Somewhere along the way, you stop believing your own words, not because you wanted to, but because life slowly taught you not to trust yourself. You said, I'll quit tomorrow. Tomorrow came, and tomorrow left. You promised yourself, this is the last time, until it wasn't. You told yourself, Monday will be different, but Monday became Tuesday, and Tuesday became next month, and next month became another year. Eventually, the hardest person to believe became the man staring back at you in the mirror. That hurts, because when you can't trust yourself, you begin questioning everything. Can I really change? Will I end up back where I started? What's the point of trying again? But here's what I need you to understand. Self-trust isn't lost in one moment. It disappears one broken promise at a time. And the beautiful thing about that is it comes back the same exact way. One kept promise at a time. Not the big promises, the small ones. The promise to get you out of bed. The promise to take a walk. The promise to read one more page. The promise to submit one more application. The promise to stay sober today. The promise to tell yourself the truth. Every time you keep one promise, inside, something quietly comes back to life. Not because the world noticed, but because you notice. Your mind begins collecting new evidence. Maybe I do keep my word. Maybe I'm stronger than I thought. Maybe I'm not the man I used to be. This is how self-trust is rebuilt. Not by motivation, not through waiting to feel confident, but through showing yourself again and again and again that your words still mean something. One promise, one choice, one difficult day at a time. And one morning, without realizing it, you'll make yourself a promise. And for the first time in years, you won't have a voice in your head saying, you'll never do it. Instead, there will be something you haven't heard in a very long time. A quiet voice that simply says, I believe you. And sometimes that's all a man needs to realize maybe it was never over after all.
You can start again, you can rise again. The floor didn't move, but my heart did. A small dead spark started fighting to live. I thought my life was over. I thought I was done, but I'm still here, baby. I found my lungs. Lift me up out of the grave I made. Lift me up.
Reinvent yourself.
Lift me up. I'm not too far to
There comes a moment in every man's life when he gets tired. Not tired from working, not tired from fighting, tired of carrying around a vision of himself that no longer exists. For years, you've been trying to outrun your past, trying to forget that mistake, trying to erase those years, trying to hide the addiction, trying to silence the guilt, trying to become someone new without ever making peace with the man you used to be. But no matter how fast you run, your past always knows where to find you. Until one day, you stop running, you turn around, you finally face him. The man who made the mistakes, the man who lost everything, the man who pushed people away, the man who broke promises, the man who almost gave up. And instead of hating him, you understand him because he was doing the best he could with the man he was at the time. He wasn't your final chapter. He was your beginning. No, you didn't get everything right. Yes, he made decisions he wished he could take back. Yes, he caused pain, but he also survived. He kept breathing when he wanted to quit. He kept waking up when life gave him every reason to stay down. He carried you through nights that nobody else knows about. And without realizing it, that broken man kept one promise. He got you here. Your past isn't asking you to control your future. It's asking to be understood. Because the greatest prison isn't what happened yesterday. It's believing yesterday gets to decide who you become tomorrow. Reinvention isn't pretending your scars disappeared. It's looking at every scar and saying, you don't get to tell me who I am anymore. It's waking up each morning and choosing the man you want to become. A man who keeps his word, a man who tells himself the truth, a man who shows up, a man who protects his peace, a man who chooses discipline when excuses sound easier, a man who keeps getting up no matter how many times life knocks him down. That man isn't born in the moment. He's built. One choice, one promise, one act of courage, one difficult day at a time. Then one ordinary morning, you'll catch yourself smiling, not because life suddenly became perfect, but because something inside you has changed. You'll realize you no longer try to prove anything to anyone or prove anybody wrong. You're no longer trying to become the man you used to be. You're becoming the man you were always capable of becoming. And maybe for the first time, you'll look back at the man you once hated and quietly whisper, thank you for not giving up. Because if he had, you never would have met the man you're becoming today. That is reinvention. Not becoming someone else, becoming the person your pain was never able to destroy.
If I kneel, let me pray. If I lost my way, then lead me today. I was buried alive, now I'm standing in flame, not the man I was.
Change your life.
But I know my own name.
If you're still here, still listening, then maybe, just maybe, there's a part of you that hasn't given up yet. Maybe it's small. Maybe it's buried beneath years of disappointment. Maybe it's been drowning out of shame, by addiction, by failure, by guilt, by everything you convince yourself you'll never recover from. But it's still there. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't still be searching. You wouldn't still be hoping. You wouldn't still be asking, can I really begin again? I don't know what brought you to this moment. Maybe you lost everything. Maybe your marriage is over. Maybe your children barely recognize the man you've become. Maybe you're lying awake every night wondering how your life ended up here. Maybe you spent years pretending you're okay. But I know what brought me to the moment, ruining everything that I thought was my life. And I know what it's like pretending everything's okay while secretly believing everyone will be better without you. And if that's where you are, I need you to hear me. Your life is not over. Not because I said so, because you're still breathing. As long as there's breath in your lungs, there's still a page left to write. Your story is not finished because you had a bad chapter. A chapter is not the book. Don't let one season convince you that there is no more seasons coming. Don't let one mistake become your name. Don't let one addiction become your identity. Don't let one divorce decide the kind of father you'll become. Don't let one failure tell you what you're worth. Because the man you are today is not the man you have to die as. There's another version of you waiting on the other side of one decision. One honest decision, one brave decision, one decision to stop agreeing with every lie your pain has ever told you. The world has spent enough time telling you who you are. Your worst moments have spent enough time introducing you. Your guilt has had a voice. Your shame has had a voice. Your fear has had a voice. It's time for hope to have one. One day, believe you'll wake up and you'll walk past that same mirror, the one you couldn't bear to look into. You'll stop. You'll look at the man staring back, Not because he's perfect, not because life suddenly became easy, not because he never failed again, but because you finally recognize him. Not as the man who lost everything, but as the man who refused to let losing everything become the end. And one day, you'll understand something that today feels impossible to believe. Trust me. Trust me. I've been here. The greatest comeback of your life was never getting your old life back. It was becoming a man your old life could never have created. So if you're hanging on by a thread tonight, hold on. If you're tired, hold on. If you're ashamed, hold on. If you're convinced no one sees your pain, hold on. Not because tomorrow is guaranteed to be easy, but because tomorrow still belongs to a man who refuses to quit today. Feeling broken does not mean your life is over. It means the identity that carried you this far can no longer carry you where you're meant to go. So focus on yourself, forgive yourself, rebuild your self-image, become someone new, because you do not rebuild your life first. You rebuild the man who must live it. And if today was the day you almost gave up, let it also be the day you decide to begin again, no matter how hopeless life feels. Keep going and keep thinking.
If I kneel, let me pray. If I lost my way, then lead me today. I was buried alive, now I'm standing in flame. Not the man I was, but I know my own name. I thought my life was over. I thought I was done. But I'm still here, baby. From the ash to the flame, I was lost, now I'm here, and I begin again.